The dropship rumbled like a caged beast above Earth's atmosphere, the hull groaning as it punched through the turbulence of alien skies. Commander Ral'Zhar kept his eyes locked on the flickering projection hovering before him. Topographical scans of the terrain below, densely forested, rugged, and crawling with primitive energy signatures. Human territory. The mission was simple: secure the outpost, extract viable data, avoid full engagement. Simple, except for the unknowns. And humans, it seemed, were built of nothing but unknowns. Ral'Zhar had fought a dozen wars on half as many worlds. He'd seen fire rain from the moons of Grotel and watched oceans boil on Thark Prime. But nothing had prepared him for this planet. Its air smelled like dust and ozone, alive with electric promise. The local gravity tugged wrong at his shoulders, heavy and insistent. Even his armor's servomotors whined in complaint. Beside him, Scout Krell shifted, his spined fingers twitching on the pulse rifle slung across his chest. "They say humans bleed red," Krell muttered, voice low, more curiosity than malice. "You think it's true?" Ral'Zhar didn't answer. He was watching the data feed sputter. Something was jamming the signal. Their insertion had been silent, undetected. Or so they'd been told. The ramp hissed open. Night wind bit into them, thick with pollen and smoke. The squad moved with precision, silent shadows against the alien trees. They were 10 strong. Trained. Armored. Focused. In 30 minutes, the outpost would belong to them. But 30 minutes was a long time on Earth. They reached the compound perimeter without incident. The walls were crude, scrap metal welded with desperation. A network of motion sensors blinked softly, unaware of the cloaked forms that passed them. Inside the outpost, faint lights glowed. Generators hummed. Human life. Ral'Zhar held up a clawed fist. The team stopped. With a gesture, he split them, 4 to the west, 3 to the east. He and Krell moved center. The objective was behind those walls, a relay device that had sent an encrypted burst into deep space just a week ago. Intelligence didn't know what it contained, only that it wasn't meant to be heard. Krell hacked the door controls, slicing the weak, magnetic lock. The door creaked open an inch. Then all hell shattered loose. A sharp crack rang out, not plasma, but something ancient and thunderous. Krell's head snapped back as a hole opened between his eyes, green ichor spraying the wall behind him. Ral'Zhar flinched, dove, rolled, his armor absorbing the brunt of impact as a second shot ricocheted from his shoulder. "Ambush," he barked into comms, though it was already obvious. The outpost erupted in noise and light. Humans poured from hidden crevices in the earth, from beneath debris, from within the walls themselves. Camouflage, misdirection, tricks. They used projectiles, crude but lethal, and they fought with the ferocity of dying stars. Ral'Zhar returned fire, his plasma bolt carving a man in half. The body fell in 2 clean pieces, still twitching. But the others didn't falter. They surged forward, screaming war cries in languages Ral'Zhar didn't understand. Or maybe he did. Maybe all species screamed the same when cornered. He caught sight of a woman leading the charge, face smeared with ash, eyes burning with defiance. She held no gun, just a blade and a small pack. She threw something. Flashbang. The world went white. When the light cleared, 3 of his squad lay writhing on the ground, their optics overloaded, armor scorched. Ral'Zhar roared, tearing through 2 humans with his claws, their soft bodies no match for alien steel. But they kept coming. For every one he killed, 2 more appeared. This wasn't warfare. It was resistance. And it was personal. He activated a pulse burst, temporarily disrupting the battlefield's electronics, including human implants, if they had them. The tide slowed. The humans staggered. It bought seconds. Enough. He dragged the relay device from its housing, an old thing, patched with wires and human tape, absurdly primitive. Yet it had spoken to the stars. That alone made it dangerous. Ral'Zhar triggered the emergency beacon. Extraction requested. Location marked. But as he turned to flee, he saw the woman again, closer now. Her blade was drawn, serrated and humming faintly. She lunged. Their bodies collided in midair. They fell rolled. Her blade sliced into his armor, sparks flying. He struck her, once, twice. She grunted, but didn't break. Her blood was red. Very red. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. Ral'Zhar paused, not out of sympathy, but because there was something else. Not fear. Not rage. Just certainty. A knowing in her eyes that unsettled him. As if she saw past the war. Past the alien. "I never wanted to be," he growled back. He pressed his blade into her side. Fast and final. She gasped and sagged, eyes wide as her body gave up. Her hand stayed on his arm longer than it should have, trembling. Then it slipped away. Ral'Zhar stood over her corpse, the relay in his grip, breathing hard. Around him, the field was silent again, bodies steaming in the cold air. His team was gone. Krell was gone. Only one extraction signal blinked. As the dropship descended in the distance, breaking the tree-line like a ghost, he turned one last time to the woman's face. Not in victory, not in regret, but in confusion. Because for all his conquests, all his battles across stars and empires, Ral'Zhar had never fought anyone like humans. And something told him this wasn't over. Rain fell in greasy sheets over the city's broken skeleton. Once called Santiago, it was now a carcass of bent steel and crumbling stone, caught in a slow-motion collapse. Commander Ral'Zhar watched from the ruined edge of a high-rise, visor dimmed against the acidic drizzle, pulse rifle across his chest. Below, movement slithered through the alleyways, human resistance cells scavenging, scheming, surviving. It had been 92 Earth rotations since the initial contact. The war was no longer surgical. It was attritional. Gone were the clean strikes and coordinated offensives. Now it was street by street, breath by breath. And Earth was winning, not through strength or numbers, but something deeper, stubbornness carved into their bones. Ral'Zhar wasn't alone. 3 of his squad remained. Mare, a silent, brute-force tactician with armor scorched black from firebombs. Neshel, young and unnervingly fast, her reflexes still sharp despite sleep deprivation. And Varex, the engineer, who barely spoke now and whose left leg had been replaced by human metal, scavenged from a kill site after their medbay was bombed. They had lost the rest weeks ago. No reinforcements. No uplink. No retreat. The fleet had shifted orbit. Supplies were cut. The squad was stuck, embedded in enemy territory, surrounded by ruins and shadows that screamed. Ral'Zhar tapped his comm movement near the water tower. Scouting party. 4 figures. Armed. Mare's voice crackled back. "Shall we greet them?" Ral'Zhar considered. The water tower had been converted into a resistance safehouse. Intel suggested a comms rig had been built into its scaffolding, using alien scraps. He didn't care about the tower. He cared about what was transmitted from it. "Close the perimeter. Take them alive if possible," he ordered. But nothing ever went as planned. The ambush was textbook. Ral'Zhar had learned their tactics by now. Humans liked distractions. A bottle rolled from a ledge. Neshel turned. The next moment, smoke and fire burst outward, and the air was filled with gunfire and screaming. Ral'Zhar leapt from the high-rise, landing hard among the chaos. The humans were fast, erratic, clever. One dove between wreckage and lobbed an incendiary device that lit Varex's cloak. He dropped, shrieking, trying to roll it out. Mare grabbed the nearest attacker and slammed him against a pillar, cracking bone with a wet sound. Ral'Zhar neutralized another with a plasma burst, but not before the human pulled a trigger. Something hissed. A syringe embedded itself in Mare's neck. Mare staggered, choking, eyes wide with unfamiliar fear. Poison. Biological warfare. Crude, but effective. He collapsed. Neshel dragged his body back under cover, roaring in fury. Ral'Zhar pushed forward, rage boiling now. He caught one of the humans, a wiry young man with dirt-caked skin, and threw him against the wall hard enough to break ribs. "Who's your leader?" he snarled in broken English. The boy spat blood. "You think we have one?" The others had scattered, but the message was clear. Every building was a fortress. Every sewer grade a trap. There were no fronts, no rules. And every human dead was replaced by another with more hatred and fewer illusions. They retreated to a sewer passage beneath the North Street. It stank of rot and chemical runoff. Mare was dead. Varex lay unconscious, his body cooling. Neshel sat in silence, head bowed, her fingers twitching nervously. Ral'Zhar activated a hololog of the woman from the outpost, the one with the blade and the eyes that still haunted his sleep. He had meant to record her death, but the armor systems had done so anyway. She stared at him, frozen mid-charge, blood on her mouth, fury in her stare. "They don't fear us," Neshel said quietly. Ral'Zhar turned. "They will."
"No," she said.
"They should. But they don't. They look at us like we're just another enemy. Not gods. Not monsters." Ral'Zhar deactivated the projection. "We underestimated them. That was our first failure." "And the second?" Neshel asked, not unkindly. Ral'Zhar looked toward the sewer exit, where faint daylight filtered through the cracks like dying hope. "We stayed." That night, they moved again, toward the tower. A final attempt. Not because they believed in victory, but because they needed something to justify their survival. The resistance had thinned in this sector. Either they were pulled elsewhere, or preparing for something bigger. When they arrived, the tower stood like a sentry over the wasteland, cables snaking up its spine, lights blinking faintly at the top. The entrance was unguarded. Too easy. They climbed cautiously, rifles drawn. At the second platform, a motion sensor clicked. "Trap," Ral'Zhar muttered. But the explosion never came. Instead, they found the platform empty except for a single chair. A recording device lay on the seat. Human-made, jury-rigged from alien parts. It clicked to life as they approached. A voice, female, unbroken, eerily calm, filled the space. "If you're hearing this, you've survived long enough to understand us. We don't fight because we can win. We fight because we remember what it means to lose. We've buried our cities, our children, our future, but we'll never bury our will. You brought your war here thinking we'd surrender. You were wrong." Silence. Then static. Ral'Zhar crushed the recorder underfoot. It wasn't about information anymore. Not control. Not even survival. This war had become something else, ritual, perhaps. Or penance. They descended without a word. Above them, the tower blinked in the night, sending its signal to no one and everyone. Ral'Zhar didn't look back. There was nothing behind him except ghosts. And ghosts had already claimed this world. Night bled slowly into dawn, casting long orange streaks across the shattered skyline. The tower no longer blinked, its transmission silenced, its message already absorbed. Ral'Zhar stood on its roof, armor dull and streaked with ash, one hand resting against the cold metal rail. Below, the husk of the city lay dormant. Broken, yes, but still breathing. Somehow, always breathing. Neshel crouched near the edge, eyes scanning for movement. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The relay's gone. They knew we'd come. They wanted us to find that recording." Ral'Zhar nodded, his gaze distant. "They've stopped hiding. They're shaping the battlefield." Neshel didn't reply. They both knew what that meant. Earth's resistance had evolved. This was no longer desperation, it was design. Varex had died during the night. No ceremony. No farewell. Ral'Zhar had burned his body in the shell of an old transport, the flames rising silently into the gray sky. There was no honor left in this war, only endurance. They descended the tower in silence and began moving north. Rumors from scattered comms suggested a large human force was consolidating near the coast. Perhaps a base. Perhaps the last bastion. Either way, it was a target. By midday, the terrain shifted. Less ruin, more nature. Trees crept up through the concrete, roots splitting roadways like brittle bones. It felt wrong, this quiet, as if the earth itself was reclaiming the chaos. And yet, Ral'Zhar felt more watched here than anywhere else. They camped in the remains of a diner that evening. Tables overturned, booths half-eaten by mold. The walls bore graffiti in multiple languages, scratched into paint and steel. Some were curses. Others, names. One message, scrawled in blood, read, "We do not kneel." Neshel lit a fire from broken chairs. The flames cast deep shadows across her scaled face. "They believe they've already won," she said, staring into the flicker. Ral'Zhar sat across from her. "They haven't. Not yet. But soon." He looked at her, really looked. She was thinner now, haunted. Her voice had lost its sharpness. Her words weighed with something heavier than defeat. "You can leave," he said. "There are still pods left. Hidden extraction beacons. You've earned your escape." Neshel gave a bitter smile. "And go where? Back to a fleet that forgot us? To a command that sends soldiers to die in silence?" Ral'Zhar didn't press. She was right. Their war had become inconvenient. The higher powers would rather forget this planet than admit it was bleeding them. And Earth, cursed Earth, refused to die. The next morning, they reached the coast. There was no base, no outpost, just a mass of humans, hundreds, maybe more, gathered on the cliffs. No banners, no uniforms, just civilians. Children, elders, fighters, all watching the horizon. Ships dotted the sea, low and slow, built from wreckage and willpower. Floating cities, rafts of resistance. They weren't fleeing. They were moving, repositioning. Ral'Zhar and Neshel crouched in the undergrowth, unseen. It wasn't an army. It was a people. They hadn't gathered to fight. They had gathered to endure. "They're not preparing an attack," Neshel whispered. "They're preserving something." Ral'Zhar's jaw tightened. "They want to survive us, outlast us. And they might." Suddenly, a voice spoke from behind them. "You shouldn't have followed us." They turned, weapons raised, but the speaker stood alone. A human man, unarmed, weathered by war but calm. His eyes carried the weight of someone who'd buried too many. Ral'Zhar didn't shoot. Neither did Neshel. "We didn't come to kill civilians," the commander said. The man tilted his head. "You've killed enough of us not to know the difference." Ral'Zhar stepped forward. "Why gather here? Why risk exposure?" "Because truth doesn't need shadows. We fight in the open now. And because you won't understand us until you see us. Not as threats. As what we are." The human stepped aside, gesturing toward the sea. Ral'Zhar looked, and for the first time in this long war, he saw humanity not as an obstacle, but as a force of nature. Scarred, driven, communal. Not unified by empire, but by loss. The kind of loss that never calcified into weakness. Only fire. The man continued, quieter now. "We've told our stories. In ash. In code. In blood. You came here expecting obedience. What you found was memory. And memory doesn't die." Ral'Zhar looked at Neshel. She met his gaze, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. Not fear. Not awe. Recognition. There was no battle to fight here. No victory to claim. The humans had already won in the way that mattered, by refusing to vanish. Ral'Zhar turned back to the man. "Then why let us live?" "Because you need to carry the story, too." The wind rose over the cliff, tugging at armor and ragged coats. The ships moved further out to sea. The moment passed. Ral'Zhar and Neshel withdrew, vanishing into the trees. No shots fired. No blood spilled. Just silence. That night, under a moon half-shadowed by dust, Ral'Zhar activated a recording module in his armor. "This is Commander Ral'Zhar, designation Alpha, 23. I report not from a battlefield, but from the aftermath of purpose. The enemy we faced did not break. They endured. Their weapons were crude. Their tactics, unrefined. But their spirit..." He paused. "Their spirit was indestructible. I carry their memory now. Not out of defeat, but out of respect." He ended the log and stared into the dark. There were wars yet to fight. Stars still to bleed. But Earth had taught him the hardest lesson of all. Some enemies can be conquered. Others must be remembered.